Hello and welcome to another edition of the Office Hours podcast. I'm Cisco, Cotto, one of the professors in pastoral studies at Moody Bible Institute. Today we are talking about the discipline of work. Undergraduate students have been going through the book Disciplines of a Godly Man here at Moody. And chapter by chapter, we're learning about things that the Lord has given us to do in order for Him to make us holy, to increasingly purify us, and so that we can live lives that honor Him. The whole goal being to ultimately be more and more each day like Jesus. Our guest today is Dr. Mikel Del Rosario. He's a professor of Bible and theology here at Moody Bible Institute. Mikel, it's really great to have you on the podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
So if we're going to talk about the discipline of work, do we probably have to go back to the beginning? I mean, where do we first see work? Where does God say, hey, you're going to be working?
I think before even we get to human beings working, we got to see that God is actually a worker and that God created. I like to say that God is the original content creator because God created everything. And so human beings made in God's image, there's something inside of us that makes us want to work, that makes us want to do good work and produce beautiful things, good things. I think that's part of our being made in God's image. So I think the story of work begins with God as the worker.
Yeah, God creates, He's working, that's good. I like starting there. And then He creates people, and instead of them just watching Him work or enjoying His work, He also makes them to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Adam is a gardener as well, just like God planted a garden. So there's a student here on campus who she is a gardener, and so she was in my ethics class, and I just pointed out how God is a gardener, and Adam was a gardener, and so when you're working on gardens and planting things, you're actually participating in the original kind of work that God did. How cool is that,
Yeah, I'll be honest. I live in suburban Chicago. I have a big backyard. We have all kinds of plants. Mm-hmm. And I have to go out there and weed and do all that, and I hate it. I hate it. And what I've done to fool myself into thinking that this is okay is I've started saying, I'm Adam. I'm in the garden. I'm doing what God has made me to do. This is wonderful. Thank you, God, that I have the ability to do this. The arms and the legs and the physical capability. And so I actually keep going back to Eden in order to deal with the work that I don't really want to do. Let's talk about that not wanting to do it, because you mentioned that God is a worker. God has created us in His image to be workers, and yet it is messed up, and we fight against it, and it's hard, and we don't like it. Just kind of talk about how work got messed up.
Yeah, well, as a result of sin, we have the fall, which is not just something that affects human beings, it affects the world too. And so it's not that work came into the world because of the fall, but because of the fall, all the barriers that are there that frustrate us and make work more difficult than it really needs to be, that's part of the fall. And so when we engage with work and we have this drive to work and then all these barriers get put in our way, we feel like, why is this frustrating to us? Well, that's a result of the fall.
Now, expand on that, because I think you're touching on something that a lot of people think, even though they may not articulate it, they feel as though work itself is the result of the fall.
That's right.
All of, whether it's the office or in ministry or wherever it is that they're working, at a restaurant, they get worn down, they get tired, they don't like it, and they start almost cursing Adam and Eve. I mean, you guys did this. Oh, sin did this. But it's not sin that is the reason why we have to be out there working.
Yeah. I mean, again, God is the original worker. He created us to do good work. In fact, Ephesians says that God has created us for good works, that we might do the things that He's called us to do, right? And so when we find these things frustrating to ourselves, we need to remember it's not the work itself. Because ministry is service. And if you're going to be serving other people, you're going to be working for other people. And most of us work for other people. Even if you work for yourself, you're still serving others. Could be serving your clients, serving your customers, right? And so ministry itself is work. It's service. And so that is something that we should be able to see as a selfless act for others, a way to love our neighbors as ourselves. And the way we do that is to work.
And then that, understanding that biblical truth, we were made to work. God made us to work. We honor Him when we work. If we're repeating that to ourselves and having a clear understanding of that, it seems like then there's a mindset shift where we can recognize the result of sin in work and the challenges that it creates, but we can stop trying to get out of work, maybe be a little less prone to laziness and just trying to unload everything, we can see it as I'm doing what God has made me to do.
Yeah, and he's gifted us in different ways too. So some things come more naturally to us. You and I are not really that nervous behind the microphone right now because we are radio people and podcasters, and God's gifted us with the gift of speech in some way, right? As teachers, as suppressors. Other people are gifted in other ways too. And so if you have a job, let me just encourage people this way. If you have a job where 75% of the work is to your giftedness, then praise God. There might be some 25% that's administrative work that you just have to reconcile your credit card, receipts, whatever, right? But that's not your every passion. That's a good job. It's probably a bad job fit if only 10% of your giftedness is being used, and the rest of it is you going blind on spreadsheets and you're not a math guy, right? Probably won't be a good way to serve your customers, your clients either. So recognizing the giftedness that God has given us can also show us where we can be most effective in ministry.
And that can lead us, you brought up, I think, a good pastoral consideration, is that can maybe take a young person and lead them toward a particular career. Maybe someone who's already in the working world can think about changing careers if they're noticing that. But what about that interim time where maybe you're looking to work in an area of your giftedness and you're unable to find a job, you're unable to get a job. Maybe you feel stuck in this job where you're not gifted and you just can't get out. What do you do in that situation? Because you can't just quit your job. You don't just want to curse the work, and yet, as you're talking about, you're not feeling it because you're not in the area of giftedness.
Yeah. Well, there is a great way to shift your mindset as a Christian to think about, I'm not just doing work as a paycheck. God has given me this job. Thanks be to God, you even have a job, right? Other people are still looking for work. So let's say you're in a job and it's not a great job fit. You don't really like it. You know, it's for a season, but at least you're being provided for and God's given you this opportunity. There's a great illustration I got from a guy named Greg Forster. He used to work for the Kern Family Foundation. And he said, if you go into this job and think, I pull this lever, and when I pull this lever, it makes me money. So the only reason I'm here is to pull this thing and just keep pulling it so that it makes me money. You're going to hate your job even more. But if we can just shift our mindset to think about ministry as service, what does this lever do? Maybe this lever makes a part for a car that makes cars more safe. That makes families more safe. That helps the community. It's common grace for the common good. You're part of a bigger thing than yourself. So how does this little mundane thing that I'm involved in that could just be an autopilot thing and you just pull the lever to make money, how can I see that as part of the bigger thing that I'm contributing my gifts to? And you can think, I'm going to show up to work today and I'm going to do this to help people be more safe.
Yeah, I think about in high school, we had a janitor who was always whistling, always smiling, always happy. And unfortunately, a janitor, it's among the jobs that people sort of look down upon, you're just a janitor. And yet if a janitor, as a follower of Jesus, is keeping the mindset in mind that you're talking about, they would go beyond, I'm just cleaning up the bathroom. I'm just making a little money. But you'd move out to the health implications.
Yeah.
I'm keeping people safe. I'm making sure that they can do their work. In the case of a school, I'm making sure that these students can learn and go out and serve the Lord. It really almost always is much more than the widget or the
That's
activity.
Right. Yeah. My son had a job at Dallas Seminary in custodial as well, and he would go into work, and I'd tell him, especially during COVID, I was like, health is super important right now, and all these protocols that we have to follow, that's a responsibility that people have given to you to help contribute to this and keep the seminary running.
Is there a sense in which we're honoring the Lord, no matter what our job is? We are honoring the Lord. There's obviously that mindset, but there's also this use of our gifts, use of our abilities. We're just the very act of working is something that can honor the Lord regardless of what we do.
That's right. Yeah, I think for some people, they think, how can I be an ambassador of Christ at work? And they automatically start going to, I can share the gospel with my coworkers. Maybe during lunchtime, I can have a Bible study or something like that. But to think about doing the actual work in a way that glorifies God, in a way that you are showing what it is to bring that Christian mindset to the workplace. You're serving your customers. You're serving your coworkers. And if you're in a job where you just feel like you're doing mundane things, think about what happens if you don't do that. if you don't do that, something's going to break or fail, or some people are going to get hurt, or your boss is going to have to do it for you. Your boss, he or she doesn't have time to do that. That's why they hired you. And so I would just encourage those who are listening, if you have a job and you feel like it's kind of a mundane job, you think it's not important, your job would not be a job. It would not be important to the company. They're paying you to do it, right? So if it wasn't important, you wouldn't be on the payroll.
Yeah, they're not going to give you money just for fun.
Yeah.
It's just, we like you. We'll pay you to sit around here.
Yeah. So, but this whole idea of Colossians 3, working for, doing your job as unto the Lord, not just working for men. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love that, bringing that to the jobs that I do.
And part of that is a regular meditation, maybe on that. A regular. It's more than just change your mind. It's a regular reminder on the bad days, on the days when I don't even want to be here. I've thought about calling in sick or whatever. Man, I am honoring the Lord here in what I'm doing. Lord, this is bringing glory to you as I'm doing this, even in my imperfect way. It seems like that regular meditation on that is vital if you're going to do this well.
Yeah. The way you care for your coworkers as well, the way you serve instead of cursing your boss, like, why do you have to give me this stuff? To think about, well, this boss has a lot to do. That's why they hired me to do this, because the boss can't do everything. And so to look at it as service. And I love seeing examples of servant leadership where, and I'll go ahead and give this example. My mentor, Dr. Darrell Bach at Dallas Seminary, he's a very well-respected theologian and New Testament scholar. And yet when we were setting up events, he was there with us, putting name cards out on the chairs, putting the registration things out with us. And I just thought that was just a picture in my mind of servant leadership, and I take that into my job today, just remembering that.
You mentioned earlier bringing faith into the workplace. There is this faith and work movement, kind of not helping people to not divorce faith and work, but seeing the two is very, very compatible since God made work. Tell us a little more about that. What are some people doing? What kind of change do they want to see?
Sure. I had this great conversation with a man named Mark Belton, who used to work for General Mills. And he just had a great way of helping people see the value in their work and help people see the way God sees them and God sees their work and even their customers. So he had this brand, Hamburger Helper. You've probably heard about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a very affluent base that's supporting that brand. And yet he would tell people working on that brand, he's like, don't disparage these customers. These customers are hardworking people who are trying to provide for their family, and this product fills a need for them. And he goes, the only reason that you are driving that fancy car is because you are doing a good job serving them. Yeah. And so, again, to see it as ministry, as service. And then people coming up to him saying, there's something that I see about you. You're a very authentic kind of person in the way that you talk about work, the way you do your work. Can we get breakfast so I could just talk about why I see something different in you? And he's able to share about his relationship with the Lord that way.
Yeah, but that's only possible if in the workplace, you're not like everyone else.
That's right.
With the gossip and the slander, you talk about being critical of the boss. There's all these temptations. You're working hard. You're doing your job well. It's only possible if you truly are living like a Christ follower. Otherwise, they're not even going to think to ask you what makes you different, because you're not different.
That's right. I can imagine Jesus doing a shoddy job on his carpentry or stonemasonry work, cutting corners to make an extra buck, right? Those would be the best products in the world, right?
That's right.
Made by Jesus. So I think we should take pride in our work and say, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability and through the power of the Holy Spirit, so that in my job I'm exhibiting love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all these fruits of the Spirit, right? And how is that going to impact our work? So no matter what industry you're in, I think virtually every industry, short of being a hitman or producing pornography or something like that, there is a redeeming quality to the work that you're doing where you can show people what it would be like if Jesus was doing your job.
One of the first questions that people ask when they meet someone is, what do you do? What do you do? It's that easy icebreaker question. What that can lead to is identity building. I am what I do. I am where I work, which is a challenge because while it's true that we do those things, that's not really where our identity should be. Yeah,
that's right. I think especially as for guys, it's really easy for us to put our name on the business card as the main thing in our lives and say, like, whatever the business card says, that's who I am. I learned about this when I was a missionary in the Philippines. I would walk around and introduce myself, and where we were in the Philippines, everybody added their title. Oh, here's this person. He's the VP of XYZ Corporation. And so they would introduce me and I'd say, hi, I'm Mikel. I'm a missionary, right? Well, when we came back from the field, what do I say? Hi, I'm Mikel. I'm nothing. It's like, no, I'm not nothing.
I'm nobody.
Yeah. But I'm made in God's image. I'm an ambassador of Jesus. I'm a child of God. And what that means is I can have dignity and represent my Lord at a job interview, represent him in any setting, even if I don't have, because, the business card, that's going to come and go. Your job is going to change, right? There's 3 ways we can get our identity. One way we can get our identity is from other people. What do other people say about you? Who are you? Oh, you're just a radio broadcaster in their mind. And if the crowd says that, then that's you, right? Another way is from inside of you. If you say, well, I have these desires, and so that's what I am. I'm a guitar player or something. But our desires change too. And so if we get our identity, though, from outside us, from a transcendent, objective source who is God, and that's our primary identity, and nobody can take that away from you. And you have dignity regardless of whatever's on your business card.
Yeah, and it really begins to change who you see yourself as.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're, and when I say that, I mean you begin seeing yourself rightly, as though this is actually how I'm supposed to view myself with it, and changes other things.
Yeah, and sometimes we privilege this idea of ministry as only doing, for lack of a better term, Christian things in the 4 walls of the church, preparing to preach a sermon, leading Sunday school or youth group. But to take seriously this common grace for the common good, this idea of taking dominion over the world, making good things come out of it. We don't harvest iPhones off of trees. Human beings have to make those things. We take natural resources and we can turn them into phones. But we have to work to bring goodness out of the world like that, to bring useful things into the world. At Common Grace for the Common Good, I'm reminded of another story, a guy named Hans Hess, who was a Dallas Seminary grad, and he was working on Capitol Hill for a little bit as a legislative aide, and he came across this white paper about how there are these superbugs that we're developing because of commodity beef having a bunch of antibiotics and whatnot in it. And to make a long story short, he decided there's got to be a better way so I could take my family to a hamburger restaurant and feel good about what they're eating. He started this whole restaurant called Elevation Burger, based on grass-fed, cows that weren't being pumped full of antibiotics, right? And he didn't just do that to make money. He did that for the common good. And his future mentor, Steve Garber, walked into the restaurant one day and he's like, "Are you a Christian?" It's like, "Yeah, why do you ask?" And it's because of the way that you went about doing this, right? It was for the common good. It was for not just for making money. So our work needs to be more than a paycheck. It needs to be a way to glorify God and extend common grace for common good.
You touched earlier on the fact that if your identity is wrapped up in work and then that goes away someday, which it does for everyone.
Yeah.
You're going to struggle. Is it important to think of ourselves as interns, no matter what we're doing? We're professors here at Moody. I'm a radio host. You're a podcaster. Maybe there are doctors, lawyers, plumbers, landscapers. There are all sorts of people who are watching this. There are pastors. Someone's going to be in that job someday. So you may have that job now. You may be doing very well. You may be well known, depending upon what the field is. And yet someday, whether illness, injury, death, whatever it is, even a layoff, you're not going to be in that job. And does that then help with the identity formation? Hey, someday I am I'm a pastor, a professor of pastoral studies at Moody. There were professors of pastoral studies before me.
Yeah.
There will be professors of pastoral studies after me. And it seems like that's one way to keep it from becoming prideful and really making our identity that. Someone else is going to be doing this after me someday.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I learned that when I was a missionary and I came off of the field. You don't want to be a was, you want to be an is. So especially for people who are looking at retirement, getting older, we can't retire from something and not retire to something. You find people who they think, "Yay, I've made it, I'm done. Wait, now what?" And so they begin to take on projects. They write a book or they work on their garden. We have to have, again, it's part of us being made in God's image. We have to have some work to do that expresses our giftedness, because that's what God made us to do, and we just can't help but do it. I even think about in these Japanese internment camps, there's art that they've discovered from there, made out of little tin cans and things, of just exquisite pieces of art made from trash, from people who could not help but express their giftedness, even in such desperate circumstances. And some of that even helped keep them going. So I always see that when I see people expressing their giftedness, how God has made us to work and how our identity should really be in the Creator.
Yeah, and the people who might be watching this who are not yet retired, you talk about retiring to something. Is that one of the problems? People don't plan, they don't think about continuing serving the Lord in some capacity, so they might get into that retirement season, and then they're sitting on the couch going, potentially literally getting into a depression. I don't have anything to do. I don't even know what to go about. I can't just watch TV all day, but I don't know what to do. Is that important to be planning that out in this next season? How are you going to be serving the Lord?
I think in general terms, we can make plans. Man makes the plan, but the Lord directs our steps, right? So if we're just faithful to the opportunities that God's put in our path, and just be open to how the Lord leads you, as you're getting up there in age, thinking about when there's a time that you don't need to work anymore, what will you do with your life then? Well, maybe there's ministries you didn't get to do while you were too busy at a 9 to 5. Now you can go spend 3 months overseas and not really worry about support raising, and really find areas where you can minister in ways that you couldn't before. Or even if you're in a retirement home. I have a retired pastor who has been a mentor to me for years, and in the retirement home, he's still able to be a minister, not just a retired pastor like I was a pastor. I still am a pastor in some sense to the residents in this nursing home. And so it gives them a way to continue to minister.
Talk about retirement, because the American dream for decade upon decade is I get out of school, whether it's high school and into a job, or whether I go to college and then into a job. I work and work and work for several decades. I save up some money. I get X number of dollars in my 401k. And then at age 65 or 67 or 70 or whatever it is, I am done. Because there are people, we talked about planning, there are people who plan to just go to the beach and I'm not doing anything else. My father had a friend who was like this, and he spent all those retirement years in the same routine. I wake up, I have breakfast, I read the newspaper, I watch the news, I take a nap, I wake up, I have lunch, I go to the beach every day. And I thought, that sounds miserable. And yet that was his big dream. He's not a believer. For Christians, our retirement should be something more. We're not ever able, as long as we're physically able, to just say, hey, I don't work anymore, I'm retired. Yeah,
well, we have this perhaps entitlement issue in a very selfish kind of carnal way that our flesh just wants to say it's just all about me, right? Well, it's never been all about us. So whether we have a full-time position or whether we're in our retirement years, how could we be ministering and serving others? And if God has granted you financial stability where you don't really need to worry about money, maybe you can be more generous with your time. Maybe you could even be more generous with your money. And so to keep an eye out for where are those things where I can step in and make a difference, common grace for the common good, doing church work, whatever it happens to be, that for such a time as this, God may have prepared you with the financial resources to be a blessing to others.
Talk to the young person, because we're both at Moody Bible Institute. Talk to the young person who is going to go into ministry, and someone at some point in their ministry career is going to say, well, what you do is more important than what I do. What you do is really sacred. Pastor, you're really sacred. And in one sense, ministers of the gospel, we have the most important news ever that we're sharing with people regularly. I mean, non-pastors should be doing that too. But, in that sense, yes, we have the most important news. And yet, how do we help people not see their job in the office, on the job site, wherever it is, in the home, not see their job as unimportant or kind of down here on the ladder of good, important jobs?
Yeah, good. That's a good point you're raising. So there's this sacred secular dichotomy that we need to resist, that there's sacred work like preaching a sermon, and then what is it, the devil's work to work at a hospital and do surgery on somebody?
Right.
No, thank God for doctors. I'm really happy that the surgeon who worked on my son didn't decide, I'm just going to go do missions work and not be a surgeon because it's less holy somehow. I'm glad he was there. He came to work that day because my son really needed that. So I think to think of how we can serve other people, again, ministry is service, not just in the four walls of the church. So thinking about the importance of what your work brings to the world, it's not any less holy, or else you're just going to think, well, there's Jesus' work and then there's the devil's work, right? Yeah. So everything bringing good into the world, that's fulfilling the dominion mandate, that's fulfilling the Great Commission, everything that God's called us to do. We can do good work and to serve the common good.
Talk to the people who will be prone to workaholism. And some of them won't think about it. Some of them will say, well, if I honor the Lord with my work, then I'm just going to dig all in. Mm-hmm. In my many years of ministry, I've had so many pastor friends who have overworked with almost a sense of pride. Mm-hmm. I'm exhausted for the Lord. Yeah. I'm just working so hard. Talk to those people. Yes, we're made to work, but it doesn't honor God for us to overwork in that sense.
That's right. Yeah, work can be an idol. So we were made to work for God or working for the Lord, even though we're we're still working as unto the Lord, even if we're working literally for somebody else, right? But overwork is a telltale sign that you've turned work into an idol. If it starts to eke out your time with God, if it starts to infringe upon your time with your family and other responsibilities, that's when you know that you have a problem with work being an idol in your life, and it could very well be that identity piece. So ask yourself, okay, so let's say I have to give a presentation. I'm going to Michigan in a couple weeks to give a presentation. If I practice that presentation 8 times a day, every day for 2 weeks, to the detriment of my family or my church responsibilities or what else, why am I over preparing for this? Why am I overworking? Am I afraid of what people will think about me if I mess this up, if I don't say things just so, or if my PowerPoint isn't exactly as graphically designed as it could be? Maybe there's a little identity piece in there that I need to let go of. Like, I'm doing the work for God. It doesn't have to be flawless. We're not going to produce perfect work with absolutely no errors at all. And so we need to do good work. But once we start making that work take the place of our time with God or with our family and other responsibilities, then I think it's become an idol in our life. And we need to ask ourselves, where is the identity coming from here?
As our time comes to a close here, just say a word to the person who is working, they're tired, they don't like it. We're telling them that you honor God in your work, and yet they are weary because of this. What should they do? How should they handle this? We don't want to lead to the conclusion that we're saying, well, you just toughen it up. You just deal with it. It's certainly more than that. What do we say to people who are working and yet weary and not liking it, in order to help them turn it into a joy, which is what God wants it to be? Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing to say is that we can't find our ultimate fulfillment of life in work. That our relationship with God, which is the definition of eternal life, right? Knowing God and Jesus is the definition of eternal life, and that's the only thing that brings lasting human fulfillment. We shouldn't think that we should get all our satisfaction from work, and oftentimes we don't get much satisfaction from work. But to say, okay, where am I getting my satisfaction really? Maybe I'm looking to the wrong place for it. And then 2, again, to see service as a way to minister to others, have that Christian mindset of how am I contributing to the greater good. And then also, it's okay to pray for a different job. If you're in a job that's a bad fit right now, do your best in it, work unto the Lord, and yet you can keep your eyes out for different opportunities there. And until the Lord provides those opportunities, keep staying faithful where you are and keep seeking the Lord on that. Where are you sending me? Where are you directing me? Maybe there's a different job that's a better fit that God is going to bring into your path.
I'm glad you mentioned eternity, because one thing that a lot of people don't understand is we're going to be working in eternity. Work isn't inherently an earthly thing. We're going to be along with Christ. I don't exactly know what it looks like, but it's not as though heaven is us on clouds with harps singing with angels. And I'm so glad it's not, because that would be terrible. But work is something that in some way, shape, or form or capacity does continue into eternity.
Yeah, when my dad died of cancer several years ago, and when I imagine him serving the Lord in heaven, when heaven comes to earth, we're going to be in a city, right? It takes a lot of work to manage a city and to do it well. But all the problems he had with trying to get people to get along, with financial problems, with trying to put these missionary projects together, those will all go away. Imagine if we could say, we are going to honor God with this amazing thing. Guys, it will take us 100 years to make this, but it will be amazing. By the way, there's no budget. It's an unlimited, you have unlimited funds. Don't even worry about money.
Cattle on 1,000 hills are yours.
Yeah, so God has asked us to do this thing. It's a gargantuan, gigantic thing, but we have 100 years to do it. This is going to be amazing. And don't even worry about money. Let's go. Yeah. That's where the frustration of work is going to go away. And we're going to be freed up to work joyfully for God without those problems that we see on earth that are a result of the fall.
Yeah, such good stuff. Thank you so much, Dr. Mikel Del Rosario, Professor of Bible and Theology at Moody Bible Institute. Thanks for your insight, your wisdom, your encouragement. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you so much for joining us on the Office Hours podcast. I'm Cisco Cotto, one of the professors in the Pastoral Studies Department at Moody Bible Institute. We'll see you back here again next time.